What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another Whiskey and History podcast. I am your host, Zach Homeyer. I know it's been a while, guys. Life caught up with me really quickly last year, and finally, now that it's winter time, I have a lot more free time on my hands, and so I'm going to dive right back into the Whiskey and History show. Today, I'm going to talk about the behind the scenes of making the Harmony Brothers documentary. That was in the last episode, because I did mention at the very end that this was going to be the next episode, was diving into the behind the scenes of how I created a documentary. And so before we dive into the behind the scenes, let's talk about, of course, what whiskey I'm drinking. One of my favorites. Definitely need to have a glass of whiskey talking about doing my graduate thesis project. Brings back a lot of scary, stressful times. This was about 2 years ago, right around this time. So, of course, I'm drinking my favorite whiskey, Crown Royal. What flavor, do you ask? Apple. It is my favorite Crown Royal flavor. So let's have a quick sip. You can hear the ice. Ooh, that goes down so smooth. So let's get started. So when it came to deciding what I wanted to do for my thesis, I found out my great uncle had a band. I started doing the research, and I found out all these different cool newspaper articles. Then I said, well, let me go interview the band members and see who's still alive and who isn't. Well, it comes to find out that about 50-50, one of my great uncles did die or pass away a few years back. And then so has a few of the other band members. So I went and interviewed them, got some good quality interviews in, and helped me find out what else I needed to do, like as terms of what else I need to look into, more questions, other people to interview. But out of all these things, I was able to discover more of their music, and it was digitized on CD, which is a huge, huge thing, because all I had was two of the records, which were just 45 singles with 2 songs on them. And I also didn't have the technology to digitize them as well. So that's fun. I didn't have the software or the computer to handle these things. And speaking of that, before you ever decide to make a documentary on your own or even start a podcast, make sure you have the proper equipment. I learned very, very quickly that I believed that I took on way too much to handle for my final thesis project. I had an old MacBook desktop. I think it was like a 2016, 2017 model. It could not run Adobe Premiere, which I made the documentary on. It could run it, but just barely. And I will talk about that later on. But just a forewarning for any of those young, aspiring filmmakers out there, definitely make sure you have a good computer. Now that I graduated with college, with my master's, I went and treated myself with a nice gaming computer, and I can also make little short films and everything else that I like to do. And as you guys can see on the YouTube channel, which is linked down below, that I've put together a few little snippet clips of like World War I footage from me and Matt's interview and other things. And another thing too that I have done even after graduate school is they were moving the Leland Grove house kitchen to Washington Park. And they asked me, one of the people that was on the board of handling that asked me to make a short film to help promote this project. And I did that as well. Actually got, I think, like over 300 or 400 views to help bring in donations to raise the money to move the summer kitchen. And if you guys want to see that little short clip, it's only like a minute, I believe. I will put that on the YouTube channel as well. So I'll also link that in this video, just to see, what's crazy is when you watch this, it probably took me 20 minutes to make. Back when I was using my other computer, it would have probably taken me an hour or 2 hours to make that short little film. So that just shows you, again, how you need to have the proper hardware just to make a decent looking documentary. So, your little warning. But anyway, when it comes to putting together a documentary, like I was saying, is you need to find out what you need, and that's a lot of good images, good sound, because all those things add up. Because I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not, I don't have a huge team where, you watch a lot of documentaries and they'll edit things, like edit photos, or, they have these professional graphic designers that just make it look really, really cool. Like make these images pop, they'll edit them, add things, make their own images, even reshoot a lot of footage. Like, for example, the Civil War, there's not footage from the Civil War, obviously, so they'll have reenactors, reenact the battles for documentaries. That's very, very common. Well, I don't have that. So the biggest thing for me was to gather as many digital items as I could find. And that was photos, music, any interviews that I've done. And I did this for about 2 years before I even started making the documentary. And it was a fun process. There's still a lot to even do today and for me to discover today, which I just haven't had the motivation to go back, and that's why I'm talking to you guys. And that's one thing I really want to do eventually, but my heart isn't in it right now. I need a break. I'm going on 2 years, graduated, so it's nice to have a break from stressing about that stuff. But I found a lot of cool images like you guys have seen in the documentary. And again, if you've not watched it, it's also in the link below for you guys to go check it out if you've not already seen it. It took a lot of time and effort, and I'm actually quite proud of it. Looking back now, rewatching it, it is very difficult because it's like I could actually change things and edit things a lot better and easier and quicker, which eventually I may do as well, which I think I talked about in the last episode. Maybe do like a remastered or a 2.0 of my Harmony Brothers documentary. Maybe in the future. We'll see. But the other big thing, too, when you're doing any of these things is make sure that you find a good software. In this case, I found Adobe Premiere. But again, I'm not a graphic designer. Never took any college classes on how to use any of this stuff. I did my quick crash course on YouTube. And thank God for YouTube, because again, I would have never gotten this done. I learned how to zoom in on photos and zoom out. That was really the big movement of this film. And you see that in a lot of documentaries, is zooming in and zooming out on photos or moving across photos is a great way to help keep your audience entertained. I took down a lot of notes on a lot of different music documentaries that I watched on Netflix. For example, like the Sam Hunt documentary was a huge, huge inspiration. That was done really well. One thing I really wanted to do, but again, I'm not a designer or anything like that. I really wanted to record like a 45 playing on a record player and get really cool footage of that, like in slow motion, and then play the sound of the music that the band recorded. But again, I didn't have the proper equipment, like a good video camera, and I don't really know how to do those things. But that was one thing. If I could go back and redo, shoot stuff today. I was even thinking about going to the locations today and filming the areas of where I talk about. But I don't know. That's just other ideas that I never got to fulfill in the final film. And again, I was on a very short time crunch, 3 to 4 months to compile all this into a 30-minute documentary. and learning the software. I went on vacation, early February with my fiance, just to calm my nerves before I really took a deep dive into this. And it just really, really helped a lot, because when I came back, I was just focused. And when you are on a time crunch, you spend countless hours. I probably spent over 200 hours plus putting this whole thing together. And another challenge of mine when throwing all this together was to figure out the audio. And I still, to this day, don't know how to figure out the audio. I'm still trying to figure out the audio even for my podcast. If you guys haven't already can tell, I do hopefully sound better on this episode. I did spend some money, bought a good mic. The frustrating thing in the documentary is I did obtain 2 interviews from someone from the University of Illinois at Springfield did prior to me on both my great uncles. Great interviews. Great asset for me to use in the final film. The frustrating thing is, again, when conducting an interview, is you don't want to cut off your guest. That is the biggest challenge on being an interviewer, because you are so excited to pull out information from somebody. You're so in depth in your conversation with them, and you're so eager to learn from them that you tend to cut them off. And unfortunately, this happened with a lot of the footage, even in the film. So one thing I tried to do was to mute the interviewer in different parts of the film. And by doing that, I ended up, making the audio only come out of one side, left or right side of the speaker. If you listen to it on your TV, you'll hear it coming out of just one wave instead of both waves of audio. And I think going back, I should probably just leave it. It's just an annoyance to me, because you miss out on some of the great stories that they tell, or the information that they say, both Ben and Charlie. And so that was frustrating. Another frustrating aspect too was how to edit the quality. Again, both these documentaries were filmed back in the mid 2000s. Again, camera quality wasn't good, not the best cameras either. Some of the footage is really, really clear, and other parts of it is dark and not so clear. So I had to figure out how to zoom in, because then again, like I said, the interviewer got in the way. In some parts, his head would move in front of the camera angle. The camera just wasn't just straight focused on the interviewee. And so that makes it difficult for me while editing. I had to zoom in on some parts and zoom in and out, and it was frustrating because that was very time consuming. And that's where a lot of my time was focused on, was trying to fix the audio and kind of dealing with the interviewer. And the problem is with my interview with my great uncle, it's good, but he's a lot older. He doesn't remember as much. Again, the video quality is decent, but it just is a little off, because it's not the same time period as his brother when they were both done, and cutting back and forth between the two to me would be odd, I think, and it'd be a little distracting to the viewer that would be watching the film. I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy. I don't know about that one, but that was another difficult challenge. And unfortunately, I have 3 or 4 hours of footage that I've done just separately with my great uncle Ben. But unfortunately, I didn't get to interview his brother, because I said earlier he passed away, unfortunately, years ago prior to this. So, but the UIS interviewer got some really good, high quality knowledge out of the guys, and so I felt like it was the best footage that I had. So I used it in the film. But anytime you're interviewing interview someone, just make sure that you do not cut them off. I even feel like on my podcast that I've done a good job with both Matt and Devin in the previous episodes. I try to let them talk as much as possible. Say very little when they're talking and just nod your head, smile, agree or disagree, and then wait for your chance to speak. That's what did not happen with these interviews. I wish they did, but I had to work with what I had. And if it wasn't for finding these interviews, I would have been completely screwed. Because I thought at the beginning I had enough photos, but actually, in reality, I think it was like 50 or 60 images. That wasn't enough for a 30-minute documentary. When you start getting into the things and start editing, you realize that, 50, 60 images is a lot. But when you start getting into it, no, it's not. Because you usually show every image for about 2 to 5 seconds. Some longer than others. Just depends on the subject matter. But it was stressful. But I was able to make it work. The footage was good. But again, like I said, it was good, but it wasn't. And another interesting aspect too was when I was putting all this together, I still wanted more footage. And going through the 2 interviews done, I was trying to pull out anything I could find in the meantime. And so I did reach out to WCIA, a news channel in Champaign, Illinois, where they had the footage possibly of Ben and Charlie playing on television from 1959. And I reached out to them through email. Eventually the guy called me, had a great conversation. Unfortunately, they donated all the footage to the Lincoln Library or the Sangamon Valley collection in Springfield. I can't remember, in the 1970s. And all that footage is there in that box of tons and tons of like old VHS tapes and newsreels. And so comes to find out that was absorbed into the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. I reached out to them. Of course, they've never touched it, sitting in a shelf somewhere waiting to be digitized. So there is a possibility that I did discover where there is rare footage of the band playing on television in 1959. I was not able to get a hold of, with the museum in time to digitize it or find an outside source that they would do it. Of course, Abraham Lincoln is their top priority there. So I don't know if that'll ever be digitized or not. Hopefully one day. But reaching out to the news channel on Champaign, he did have a digitized clip of the host from the show. It was like 10 to 12 seconds long, and it was awesome because he was introducing the show that they played on, and it was the hot footage, and the announcer was great, and it shows some of the teenagers dancing, and I said, wow, this is another 12 seconds added to the film. Like I explained earlier, every second is crucial in making a documentary. And they add up quick. You don't think in life, 10 seconds is a lot. But when it comes to putting together a 30-minute film, that 10 seconds is huge. And when you're able to find actual footage that's digitized from the era that you're talking about, it just adds that new, or not really new, but that element that you really need to make the viewer be like, wow, this is awesome seeing this. Like you're actually seeing what you're hearing. And that's why I wanted to do this project, because anyone can type a traditional essay for a thesis project. And I didn't want to do that. I had the opportunity to do a project. And when you're doing music, what is the best way to portray to someone about music and a story, a documentary? Because there's so many. I mean, if you look at it now, the Beatles have the new Let It Be documentary on Disney Plus. They just had another documentary come out about Abbey Road. I mean, all these big bands are now starting to really, really get even more popular with, new footage coming out that's never been seen before of these bands and being put on these streaming services just to help promote them even more. And it's just really exhilarating seeing this stuff for the first time. And when you're able to unearth, like I said, 10 to 12 seconds of something that hasn't been seen in literally like 50 plus years, that's to me unbelievable. And I just was excited that I was able to undig that little snippet. And I was like, I wish I could actually find real footage of them playing on television. I'm trying to crack down the footage of them playing in Chicago. I think I'll have to make a trip up to Chicago. I don't even know where to begin my research on that subject, but that's for another later day, another interesting challenge. But again, that was just another little fun thing that I did behind the scenes on making this film, something I'm actually quite proud of. It only took me about a week to find that footage too and unearth that. So that's actually, to me, quite impressive because a lot of this has taken me many years. Sorry, I just needed a quick drink break there. Another challenge that was pointed out to me is it's like, yeah, I'm going to do a film. Talked to my college professors. They were like, yeah, what's it going to be about? Told them. They're like, great, we want to see an outline. An outline? Well, it's going to have these things in it. Like I tell them, no, we need like an outline. So to me, I look it up on the internet. I don't really know how to do an outline. I basically typed an essay, spent, a week on that, turned it in. Yeah, this is an essay, Zach. This is not what we needed. I need an outline. So I'm like, great. That was just felt like a week that was wasted. But then I said, no. You know what? Like a script. That's what I need. So what I did was I typed up what I wanted to talk about, what images I was going to put where. I actually took out, because luckily the interviews were transcribed, I would copy and paste the transcriptions into the outline. I didn't really watch all the footage. And again, like I said earlier, there's parts where I had a really great segment of information that I had that was transcribed. That was a really good line or a couple of good sentences that I was like, this is going to kill it in the documentary. The actual footage, the interviewer is talking over the interviewee. So it's ruined. So there was a lot of times when I was actually making the film, I'm like, shit, I have to actually cut this out and redo this. I have to find a different quote that is similar, or have to cut this whole part out. That happened a couple times. And unfortunately, I lost some good parts of the story. So that really, really was a bum. A blow. Not really a bum. It was just a blow. And that was another frustrating issues was trying to put all this together, and you have it all done, and then you realize that you can't use it. That is just kills you inside when you're, like, again, on a time crunch. So that was fun. That happened, I don't know, I think 2 to 3, 4 times, handful of times. But anyway, moving on to the more fun and interesting things that have happened. One thing that really, really sucked was, I have to take a drink before I even dive into this because it just really aggravates me. So, like I said earlier, it would take me, 30, 45 minutes to even do 2 minutes worth of work on the film. All of a sudden, Adobe Premiere just closes out, crashes on my computer screen. That happened. Get back on. The whole night's worth of work, so 3 hours worth of work, was gone. And it was really good work. Like, I had some really good cuts, some really good edits. It was smooth, like it was really smooth sounding. Everything was perfect. Lost it. I wanted to scream because I got off at work at 4. I took an hour break from 4 to 5. So I started about 5:15. This happened about 8, 9 o'clock at night. And I would just sit back in my computer chair and just be like, wow, what do I do? I would just turn off my computer. It was over. I just lost a night worth of work, which is huge. And the funny thing is it's funny now, this happened, I don't know, again, like 3 or 4 times. After about the third time, I said, well, I better get smart and turn on the autosave. And then anytime I do like 3 minutes worth of work, I'd hit the little floppy disk up in the top left corner to make sure that my progress was saved. Because I cannot keep losing this, because it crashed probably about 15 times. My computer, again, could not handle Adobe Premiere, and especially when you have layers and layers and layers of images and then songs and then people talking, there's like 5 layers just in 3 seconds worth of an image. There's someone talking, then there's background music, and then there's fading in and out of images, all that stuff. And that's what I'm getting into. My next topic is you have to make sure that you have the editing down. Like when it comes to, you want to fade in and out of images, or do you want it to go right into the next image? All these things matter. And I played around a lot with this. I was really, really nervous because when I was doing this, I was spending hours and hours and hours and weeks worth of work. And it's like, I don't know if this is good, bad. I kept sitting here and I got 10 minutes done of the documentary. I don't know if it's terrible, good, or bad. My fiance watched it, 100 times. She said it was good. But it's just, when you work on something and you're so tense and nervous and worried, you just don't know. And you're like, it's terrible. You're always your worst critic. I sent it to my mother, and she loved it. I sent it to my dad. He loved it. So then finally, I said, okay, I guess I'm doing something right. So I just kept going with that formula of throwing everything around, kept going through it. Another challenge, too, was narration. When you watch so many films, originally I was going to narrate most of the documentary. Then I decided not to do that, which was a smart decision on my part. I came down to the conclusion, I believe there's 4 segments of narration, and they're usually about 10 to 15 seconds long, maybe 3 or 4 sentences. I said I can do that 3 or 4 times. So I do that, record it. I think it sounds pretty decent. It kind of is like a robot voice. I try to not sound like myself because I hate my voice. It takes a lot of confidence for me to even talk on a podcast. I just think my voice sounds weird. I think we all think that when you hear your own voice. But anyway, I did the narration, slapped it into the film. It's funny because, again, my fiance was like, you sound weird. You don't sound like yourself. You need to talk like yourself. And I did that too. It still didn't turn out good. It sounded professional to my parents, but when it came to my professor listening to it, it didn't sound that good. But the good thing was he was willing to do the narration for the film. And I said, absolutely, please do it. I'm so happy someone offered because I hate my voice and I'd rather have anyone else do it. So I got lucky there, and I really think the narration turned out really good. I'm glad that my professor volunteered for it because I think it adds a little extra flavor to the film. So that part actually turned out really good. Again, when you're making a film, make sure that you understand what you want narrated. If you want to narrate much, maybe have someone narrate for you if you're not confident, or again, if you're worried about your voice like I am. I'm self-conscious when it comes to that stuff. But I got lucky there, and it was a good experience on that. But after everything was said and done, it was finally time to present the film. And I was so nervous. I got done with it. I took a break from school because basically I didn't have to do anything, so I had like a week off for everyone on my committee to review it, and I was really, really nervous. And finally sit down for my defense, and they loved it. They thought it was very, very impressive. I was honored because I wasn't thinking that at all. Someone that, is only 26 years old, threw all this together. I impressed myself. But now looking back, like I said, there's a lot of issues with it. I wish I could change a lot of it. I'm eventually going to do it when I have some more free time. Something I'd like to revisit, make some changes, maybe even extend it. But overall, it was a very, very rewarding experience. It was one of the hardest experiences in my life. I don't want to go through that again. But in the end, it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot of self-discipline, how to time manage very well, put together something in a very, very short amount of time. So high tense situations. When you're an adult and go to work, you have to deal with this all the time. So I got to learn that firsthand and basically getting critiqued to a high level as well. Adds another level of stress because when you have that hanging over your head, you want to bring your A game. And I believe that I did do that with this film. I'm quite proud of it. But in the end, it was worth it. And I'm glad I did it because it taught me new skills. It made me more confident in myself. Here I am now 6 episodes into my own podcast. So far, the podcast is going very well. I appreciate everyone listening. But that's just some of the behind the scenes of everything that I threw together for the film. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. It's just a little filler. The next episodes, I have a lot of big things planned. Some more good stories of Civil War battles, to veterans, to family history. I'm going to finally dig into where my family came from. I have some really cool stuff from that. I'm really looking forward to this year, 2023. Hopefully to add another 10, 15 plus episodes this year is kind of my goal. So hope you guys keep me to it. Keep listening. I really, really appreciate it. Make sure you follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm more active on Twitter recently and Instagram. Facebook not as much, but definitely the other 2 platforms. And check out my YouTube channel. All the links are in the description below. So thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and let me know if you want to hear anything else interesting about my graduate school experience. Also, shoot me an email if you have any questions. That's also in the link below. Thanks for listening, and I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Bye.